Be right there.
I've got a package for you from Cast Crate.
From what?
Cast Crate, removing the obstacles of podcasters since 2020. Just sign on the line, please.
Okay.
Here you go.
Wonder what that's all about.
One of those monthly boxes full of Funko Pops and garbage? Wait, this is one of those AI podcast devices, is it? Hey, delivery guy, have you heard of Castle Doctrine? Do you realize I could dispatch you with extreme prejudice right now?
No, it looks like a film, some notes, and some random paraphernalia. An arcade stick, a copy of Family Tracker, and a signed photo of Koji Kondo.
Well, this all seems suspicious, but if it helps us get another episode in the can, let's try it out. I'm Josh.
I'm Craig.
And I'm Alex.
And we are the Heroes 3. Welcome to Heroes 3, the bi-weekly podcast where three friends explore the best, worst, and everything in between of Asian cinema. This week on the show, we are talking about the Andrew Lau and Corey Yun film, The Avenging Fist. Normally, we would have chosen, a movie that we would be talking about for, some sort of scholarly reason, some sort of pursuit. But this one showed up at our door in a crate. So we watched it and researched it for you. Alex?
So Avenging Fist was directed by Andrew Lau. So first off, he is insanely prolific. I know him best as the director of the Young and Dangerous series, which I've mentioned somewhere else before that that it's a series of like crime films, but they're just about how being a Chinese gangster absolutely kicks ass. There's none of the moral ambiguity or dark undertones that American gangster movies have. And like, to be clear, they still have like violence and death in them, but it's about like a squad of best friend human Labradors who have fun beating up rival gangs. And the lead actor of the Young and Dangerous series actually has a small part in this. In the flashback sequence, he plays like young Sammo Hung. So that was kind of cool to see. He has like a very recognizable like haircut, if you know what I'm talking about. Yeah. But Andrew Lau, he started off as like a cinematographer, and most relevant to you two is that he lensed the movies As Tears Go By and the first half of Chungking Express, the Wong Kar-wai films.
Hell yeah!
And I had actually assumed, because I knew that he shot part of Chungking Express, so I assumed that Young and Dangerous was like his first film, because it also really feels like a first film. Like, it's a little rough around the edges, and like it seems like there's a lot to prove in it, and it feels like a breakout film. But it was actually like his 10th film. He made like 10 movies in like 6 years. Are either of you familiar with the Raped by an Angel series?
I turn and look at my Raped by an Angel poster, and I shake my head. No, I've never heard of it.
We're just gonna move right on past that. But he at one point, he directed a series of popular, notable cult films. Probably not even popular, but they were called that. He directed the first one. I don't think he did the sequels. But to move on to Avenging Fist, in my brief research here, I found out that the movie has multiple titles, including Fight Zone, God of Fist Style, and definitely most tellingly, at one point it seemed to be called Legend of Tekken, which not to spoil too much about our discussion, but it's a major influence, and influence is in like 9 million air quotes, because they absolutely stole this shit from the video game, the Tekken video game series. Like, the main character looks just like Jin Kazama, and the main villain looks exactly like Harang. Like, he even has like those like silly kind of goggles on his forehead that he's always wearing in every scene. But yeah, that's why it's like this. is that I think the producer, I read this too, but so much of Asian cinema is left to be written by Western fans, or like the histories that are available to us, that supposedly it was made with the intention of being a Tekken movie, but they didn't have any of the rights, but they changed the names, I guess. They filed off the serial numbers and shipped it anyway.
I was actually meaning to ask you, I mean, if we could just go right into it. I was meaning to ask you how much of this is like the plot of Tekken. I'm not familiar with the franchise.
I'm definitely not an expert on it. I don't know. I guess I don't know, honestly. If only there was someone more qualified to answer questions about fighting games on this on Heroes 3.
Oh, more qualified than us, the Heroes 3? I think not.
You'd think there would be someone who would specialize in such a wealth of knowledge on that subject. But that brings us to it. So, how did you guys, Craig? How did you feel about Avenging Fist?
Oh yeah, this was agonizing. Physically and mentally taxing. Felt twice as long as it should have been. I do love that the crate that this came in, must have got jostled around a little bit and corrupted the data. I loved the impressionistic quality of every pixel being a square inch on my television. As soon as I this movie started, I'm like, oh, this is just Tekken, right? This is just Tekken. No, it's delirious. The lack of continuity, the lack of characters with anything resembling a depth, the horrific CGI. No, this is tough to get through. It's man. I'm really in my feelings about my father. This is one of the most Breaking Benjamin movies I think I've ever seen. I'm in my feelings about my father. I fucking love my siblings more than anything. I protect my kin. Family is for life. And then your dad is a James Bond villain, whom has been brainwashed. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to do or do with this movie or say about this movie, other than I found it agonizing and boring, and at a certain point I'm like, oh, this movie saw The Matrix. The movie saw The Matrix and tried to copy and paste The Matrix. That's no fun. We've been through that rodeo. We've seen Ballistic X versus Sever. We know that when you try to bullet time stuff, it simply doesn't work unless you're Trinity in the hottest leather BDSM wear. It's kind of endearing in its childlike quality. It's man, everything's so fucked up. I need to fight about it. I need to get in my feelings about it. That's cool, I guess. And I love how every woman in this film is exists only to self-sacrifice or die or immolate and enter into the heart of a man so he can punch harder. That's a cool gender structure that I love to see. Yeah, almost completely charmless, this film.
Yeah. Hey, you got your Blade Runner in my Matrix. You got your Matrix in my Blade Runner. Yeah, I didn't like it very much. There were occasional bursts of charm where I would be sort of amused by what was happening on screen. But I would say those moments would be sort of fleeting. I think the movie is full of moxie. I'll give it that much. They really are committing to their bit, and it doesn't feel like they skimped with what they could possibly have done in terms of being made in 2001. I mean, they made cyber Hong Kong, and they I feel like they went all out. I mean, the sets are designed. At least the story's nonsense. It's completely nonsense. Did they ever tell you why the sister can heat things?
No. No,
I thought she also had the superpowers.
Oh, she had like the DNA, the special DNA, right?
Yeah,
like,
they both had gotten the juice, if I remember correctly.
I mean, the brains hadn't been unlocked by Dianetics just yet.
Yeah,
yeah.
Right. So the Nazi cop and his sister have identical heat powers. So that was yeah. Right. So yeah. I mean, there were like moments when when like I think the charm shone through. Like I guess I liked the scene where Nova, our protagonist, is fighting Iron Surfer, the one who his sister likes. Mm-hmm. So Nova, because he knows the Avenging Fist, the forbidden martial art, he easily trumps a local boxing legend, Iron Surfer. And Iron Surfer is like hanging on the edge, and Nova goes to help him up, but Iron Surfer's like, I don't think so, buddy. And he lets go, and you think he's gonna fall to his death like 1,000 stories down, but actually it's like a cyber, it's like a holodeck, so he just falls a little bit. Yeah, I mean, like the Moxie's there, like they really committed to it. They really went for it. But like, it's I just don't really like the end result. The character interactions are meaninless. The emotionality that drives the action is meaninless. I don't really. I mean, I understand that I'm at the forefront of understanding action choreography, being a host of the Heroes 3. But like, I didn't think the action choreography looks very good. It wasn't like kinetic or like fun, really. It was kind of awkward, and like it either cut too much or not enough. It just didn't, like the punches and kicks didn't feel very weighty. So like I didn't even enjoy the fight scenes particularly very much. It just kind of happened to me.
And at a certain point, the actual like human versus human, character versus character bodily combat gives way to them shooting power glove flames at each other, or power glove lightning at each other, which is like completely like not a satisfying way for two characters to fight. It's just like Nova uses Shadow Ball, and it's like, okay, cool. Like I didn't realize the power glove could do, because nothing around like the power glove is like meaningfully established. It's just
no.
If you Hellboy a Fist of Doom, wave it at people, they just like die, I guess. Again, once you've taken all the courses and once you've read Dianetics front to back and done purification, and your brain's at 100%, then you can like cast magic with the power glove, which is fine. Like I'm okay with all of that being like poorly defined, but there's a lot of like unnecessary, like what if this noir detective was in here, but he had like a noir detective hat that was like reflective.
I did admire. They're like, okay, we're not going to dress him any different. He's just like chrome now, and I'm like, that's such an awesome idea. we can't conceptualize of a detective in any way other than like the cartoon silhouette of a detective. But yeah, make him futury.
Yeah, it's just an Inspector Gadget with a fucking with like a chrome hat.
The chrome fedora.
The chrome fedora. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot in there that, I mean, this movie just kind of doesn't need. I mean, there are many minutes that could have been shaved off. You know, the idea of like, oh, these kids don't know their lineage, and you know, they don't know who their father really is. They don't know that their father's alive. And then it's like, yeah, I mean, I'm shadowboxing with like the projected holographic Snoop Dogg of my father, and then I'm crying about it because he's dead, and I hate that he's dead. And my mom's a hard ass. Yeah, so like all the emotional beats of like, you know, mother dying, like doesn't matter because she doesn't really feel like their mother. Father suddenly being unbrainwashed and then doing self-sacrifice doesn't feel impactful.
We're kind of getting ahead of ourselves here.
Sorry.
I have to do my initial thought.
Oh,
And
Oh,
then
yes,
we can
yes.
go
Sorry.
into discussion.
How many years have we been doing this podcast? And
Yeah.
I simply, I've got a touch of the vapors now. Oh my dear.
We're off our usual format for some reason. I personally was enthralled by the first 20 minutes of this movie because it's so deliriously like an Old Navy commercial or very hyper specifically the Janet Jackson music video for It Doesn't Matter, or maybe it doesn't really matter. But I saw Corey Yoon's name as like the action scene director, and I got like, and so I was like, okay, we'll be in good hands, when it comes to action choreography. But no, I think that they were just completely seduced by The Matrix in the same way that even the Wachowskis were kind of seduced by The Matrix, making The Matrix Reloaded, where they sort of just lean into the computer effects too much, and then everything becomes like weightless and cartoonish in a way that like completely disconnects it from like the more grounded stuff. And then and then there's like CG that looks like PS1 cutscenes, and they're like rendered really poorly, and you can see even though that like this file had really chunky pixelation, you could even see like the pixelation in the full CG like establishing shots in a way that I thought was like pretty maddening. Then it has like Yun. Yes, how do they do this? Yun Biao and Sammo Hung in it, who are like two like Hong Kong legends, and they just fucking just CG the shit out of them. Yeah, it feels like you're like, I don't know, trapped in like a bad adaptation of a video game that doesn't really exist, but kind of exists because it's kind of just Tekken. Yeah, man.
From my limited history of Tekken and Tekken's cutscenes, I remember thinking, boy, I don't think any of this makes sense ultimately.
No.
Which I can.
I don't think you can get. Sorry.
I can hand a piece of media that like, this ultimately just makes no meaningful sense at all. But like, there's things like the hover bikes that everyone is on, and
Razor
Nova
scooters were big.
yeah, and Nova having taken a drugged woman to his apartment, who then like kind of like willingly / unwillingly becomes his girlfriend. There's a moment where they're on a hover bike and then they fly towards the moon. And it's like it's
the scene from Aladdin.
It's a scene from Aladdin again. If it were PS1 graphics, it's really I think there's a way it could be charming. There's a way something clunky and weird, and kind of like poorly done can be charming, but it's actually just like excruciating.
I think for the first 20 minutes it is adequately charming. Once it kind of dawns on you that like, oh, this is what the movie is gonna be like for the whole hour and 37 minutes, it really does kind of like suck the oxygen out of it.
I mean, like, definitely there are intermittent moments. Like, I remember, like, as I was watching, there would be like 30-second intervals just interspersed throughout the movie where like I'm like, oh yeah, that's kind of fun. Yeah,
you
I'm
almost did
respecting
something there, man.
The moxie's working, like the shot choice was working, the CG wasn't too egregious, the acting wasn't too iffy, and all of those things would sort of like harmonize, like the way a stopped clock is right a couple times a day, and then it would sort of fall out of pace again pretty quickly afterwards. So yeah, I mean, it's not, and I think like what makes it at all a movie is that it's so willing to be so itself. Like without that, we would truly have nothing here. But as it stands with that, it's only occasionally fun for me.
And with that, we're gonna take a look at the back of the VHS tape.
In the distant future, a rowdy young martial artist named Nova's superpowered fighting technique sets him on a quest to discover the truth about his dead father. He will have to fight cops and super Nazis to harness the true strength of the Power Glove. Lee Hom Wang and Sammo Hung star in The Avenging Fist.
I think like the sort of the fatal flaw for me for like the whole experience here is that like, and this is I guess my own personal philosophy, you know, as somebody who works like in like action animation, somebody who admires the genre, is that the action, I mean, outside of like spectacle, right? Like if the action is to be meaningful to the story, then it should make like emotional sense. And unfortunately, nothing this movie does makes like emotional sense, really. Which I mean, isn't easy. Like, you know, don't get me wrong; it's a hard thing to do. That's why there's relatively few like great movies compared to how many movies there are. But like, despite how much time the movie spends with Nova and Erica, I don't care. You know what I mean? Like they don't like there's that extended scene where after he takes Erica home when she's been dosed with earthquake, and she's seizing. There's like a scene where her job is to be like a hologram. Like she goes to hologram work.
After she takes the drug that gives you seizures.
Yeah, she goes to work at a hologram stop. And yeah, so like that's like they're like we're getting together actually. Right. And then as we said, there's that like Aladdin sequence. But like it doesn't, I don't know, like Erica and Nova's relationship is without weight. Nova and Belle, his sister, their relationship to their mother, which is, you know, ostensibly important because their father, as far as they know, has been dead for their entire lives for 20 years. But the mother is in relatively few scenes. And they make this mistake of killing her, which I think is a problem because like I think it might work a little better if she's alive for like the back hour of the movie, if she can like weigh in on events and like see the dad who's, you know, surprised, not dead. So like all of the relationships they're just people like in proximity to each other. So like, yeah, none of the action informs the emotion. None of the emotion makes the action meaningful. And it's just a feedback loop where everything that happens is just kind of happening on screen. And so I think that's kind of like the movie's undoing at the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah, everything just feels like weightless or something. like the movie just kind of progresses without like there's no attachment to anyone in it. Things play out because that's just how they have to play out. It's very kind of strange and just difficult to get like a foothold on because it's just so artificial in everything. And obviously that works for some movies, right? Like I like this seemed like very going back to Wachowski, seemed like very proto like Speed Racer in its like dedication to having fake sets at many times. And just sort of like becoming a visual avalanche of color. You know, like sometimes it works, most time it doesn't. Yeah,
it's interesting, right? There's a bombardment of like style, but like the city doesn't feel like it has a personality. The you know, like the place where they live feels like it feels like an unused like section of like a skyscraper that they managed to rent for a day. Like it doesn't have features, doesn't have ground. And you know, longtime listeners of our podcast Heroes 3 will know that we're famous for rating clubs and nightclubs, and you know, this has to be one of the most featureless nightclubs. You know, again, aside from being you know, in that way colored and in a goofy way, and maybe there are people that are styled kind of zany, it doesn't give you a kind of like terra firma. There's nothing to like stand on. So the world itself feels like floaty and disconnected, because we haven't established like what it is aside from the future. You know,
why would they do this drug?
Right, exactly.
Why are people recreationally doing a drug that seems to just give you seizures?
Yeah.
Like it doesn't look fun, but like everyone in the club is doing it.
Right. I mean, and it's one of the things too. Like you can point to a number of movies that kind of invent their own like drug. The one that comes to mind is Dread, and you're like, it gives you actually a pretty seductive reason why you would do that drug. That sequence when Mama's in the tub and it's all slow mo and she's seeing the water fractalize. Like it's like, okay, that's awful ultimately, but I can see the appeal. This just gives you a seizure. Like, hell yeah, baby. Let's hit up the club and get that grandma seizure shit going.
Dread is also about like class and policing and why people from lower class would use drugs, and like there's none of that here. It's the future and they do this crazy drug.
Right. And we also haven't established like the like how like the strata of society works. Nobody goes to a job here. There's like police, and there's like a boardroom full of politicians, and then there's like a fascist, and then there's like citizens. Right? Like you can choose amongst them.
There's hologram workers.
Right. I mean, there's that moment where like the citizenry is being like mobilized by the fascist, who's like, if you just like kill a cop, you get to become one of us. And like just this random extra character shanks a cop and is like, I killed a cop. But there's no, because like there's that idea that like I'm gonna control the world. The world's gonna be mine, and it's like it seems like it seems pretty pliable. I don't know that you'd have to like do your evil green gas to control this world. The citizenry feels pretty pliable, right? They don't have like a distinct character in any way. They just exist in this kind of future utopia where you go to the Tekken arena and then you do a chaser with the world's most brightly lit nightclub on the planet. There's a lot of style here, but there's nothing to hold on to. It's not rainy Blade Runner. It's not green Chicago in the Matrix. It's not a gritty tower block in Dread. It's just like an AI's dream of like what future is, and I guess it just means like neon and hover bikes.
Yeah. I want to talk about the opening fight because I feel like that is the one where they try. I feel like that one is, if there was going to be a grounded fight scene in this, like no one has the power glove yet, Yeah, it's just kind of two guys future fighting are they on top of a cage?
Right. Yeah. On a grate.
Yeah. The perspective in those shots is fucked. Like they're changing sizes in every cut.
It's like the final sequence when like Nova knocks down.
It's like
the
Honey,
rival.
I Shrunk the Kids at some point.
It literally turns into Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. He looks like he's 2 inches tall.
Why?
And I felt like I was going insane.
Because why? Just like with a base level of force perspective, would you put the object closer to the camera lens? Why would you make that one smaller? Why would that?
It was like a fucking Babe-ality, but it only worked one way.
Well, is it like when you're first trying to draw cubes in perspective, you'll get it wrong and you'll make the back one too large or something, and so when you connect them, it looks like shit. Maybe like there's some sort of like the 3D green screen equivalent of that going on, and just no one caught it.
Yeah, that seemed. That
know
shot
what I'm talking about?
That shot does look like a composite where they had like the foreground element and then they like composited some way the green screen like background, but they didn't think about it right. So like the person who's just been knocked down again is the size of a giant, and Nova's a fucking hobbit. You know.
They accidentally set the scale setting in After Effects to like 4,000.
Right. Yeah, I blocked that shot out where he's just really tiny in the foreground.
That's where I thought we were where I was like, oh, awesome, this movie's deranged, but then like it got really boring.
Yeah, because I think like because like the plot, I mean again, this movie's full of moxie. They go for it at every turn, but like the plot is like pretty standard, all things considered. The dad's not actually dead. Actually, he's always loved his family and taught them a secret martial art that they can use to kill like future Hitler. And it's like there's no like there's no like twist on that really. If the movie was, like you say, Alex, more deranged, like if we were getting like a future like blood sport type situation,
right?
Maybe we'd be cooking. Maybe a lot of the insane like sort of visual choices could be sort of excused away if it was like sort of a more deranged experience. But because it's so kind of rote and standard, it just makes it, you just see all the seams way more than you otherwise would.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this movie is packed to the gills with things that ultimately don't matter as well, which stand out because everything is kind of featureless. I will say I want to contrast a couple things. One is when they've like stayed out too late going to the club or whatever, or the Tekken arena. They go home and the mother has her back turned to them, and the brother character makes this little gizmo that like reads people's moods. Like a little Katamari guy that floats around and is like, oh, this person's having a good mood and this person's having a good mood, and then goes to the mom and it's like it does not want to see the mom because the mom's pissed. Right? That's like a little that was like a little bit of color that helped me like give me an idea of like what the future was like, which again is like futuristic but goofy, futuristic but silly. You have these gadgets for these insane little jokes, but then you have like this fascist guy who never moves. He's like constantly standing on a stage. He's constant like these guys have been standing for like 8 hours. His shock troops or whatever. It's like there's nothing rounding him out other than he's dressed like a vaguely like a Gestapo officer, and then like you get thrown
vaguely.
Things. Well, okay, well, explicitly, but like but then there's things like the cop who has the power glove, because his mind has expanded to 100, he has a stopwatch and he knows when he's gonna die. And it's like a couple hours from now, and it's like, but why? But why?
Because it told him, Craig.
When Nova's sister is like, "Don't cry. I have to set myself on fire and turn into ash so that you can fight better." And she says, "I'll live in your heart forever." And this movie ends. This movie ends with them like saying goodbye to her. As though she's somehow left. It's like, didn't you explicitly promise to live in his heart, but by immolating or whatever?
Yeah. I want to shout out a scene is as she dies, she becomes like this like orange CG particle dust, and then like floats away or something. And then Harang, that's the Tekken character's name. I don't remember the actual guy's name. Like holds out his gloved hand, and then just like someone off camera, it looks like they just sprinkle baby powder into it.
Yes, I was like, that's talcum.
Yeah.
Someone's out there with their talcum, just sprinkling it. Yep.
Sorry, I interrupted you, Josh.
No, and that's sort of like a perfect encapsulation of the problem, right? Because so Belle, who is I think the twin sister of Nova, she gives her life for Iron Surfer, who she's known for, I'm going to be generous and say 36 hours. But okay, it's a romance. It's fine. You
Yeah.
know, so she gives her life for him. But then there's like one scene where he uses the fire ability that he inherited from her. But most of his power comes from the power glove with which he activates his forbidden zone. So like, I just feel that she died for no reason.
It's a great point.
And it's just like, okay, if you're going to do this thing where you're going to take a protagonist and like sacrifice them, cool. Like I like a big swing. It's really got to matter though.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
another thing related to this is that like that orange particle dust comes back at the end of the movie as well. In like the final fight scene, you see a bunch of people like praying, and then like their a bunch of orange dust going up into the sky. I think it's a spirit bomb thing, right? Did I read that correctly?
Yeah, more or less.
I have never seen a movie botch a spirit bomb as bad as this one. Like, I didn't give a shit. Like, that's like the most hot-blooded formula for a fight scene, and you fucked that up. Like, that shit writes itself, man.
Yeah.
If these were my saviors, I wouldn't be giving them shit.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to ruin a spirit bomb. Like I'm thinking of like because well, it's hard to ruin it because I'm such a sucker for it.
Right.
So like yeah. So like
Same.
I'm thinking of like spirit bomb moments that literally have like brought me to tears. Like the one in Summer Wars when that little German kid sends an email. That's just an email.
Yeah. Bitch, I cried at that.
Yeah, that German child just posts and I cry.
And far from there being like some kind of denouement where, you know, there's a combat between the fascists and Nova, it's just like, what if we nuked him from orbit? There's something deeply unsatisfying about that. You know, they like tussle a little bit, but really it's like, oh man, like these guys got power gloves. And then suddenly it's like the Gears of War, like satellite nuke thing you can do. And it's just like, okay,
oh,
the hammer
of Dawn.
The Hammer of Dawn, exactly. The Hammer of Dawn.
You're welcome.
The main antagonist, and it's just like, okay, movie's over. It's like, he doesn't suffer at all. He doesn't have any cool final lines. He's just dead. He's just been like pummeled into the dirt, and the sky has been blackened. And it's opened up for a moment, like in Revolutions, where they fly over the cloud cover and suddenly everything's beautiful. Yeah. It's like, okay, I get it. I understand. The sky's black because it's the future and because you just saw the Matrix. I mean, Nova demonstrates how to get a girlfriend pretty clearly in this film, which is just being rude as hell. Firing up her hologram and being like, man, I wish you talked less. Seeing the CGI version of her and the flesh and blood version of her, and apparently not being able to disambiguate the two. One looks like a Chrono Cross character in the overworld. The other one looks like a human being, and you can't tell the difference. That's cool.
I don't want to go too much on this, but like there is a medium, okay, wherein you can do really, really, really corny shit. And it works because it's removed from reality by a degree. And to this, I would like to say, welcome to animation. The not Tekken movie would have been better as a cartoon because you're willing to put up with a lot more bullshit in animation.
Yeah, I also think that if this was animated, it would be something like Marduk Scramble. It wouldn't be anything like good.
No, it wouldn't make it like great, but like a lot of the
go
technical
down
problems.
Smoother.
Yeah, it would go. Yeah, exactly. It would go down smoother. A lot of like the technical problems would be paved over, which actually, frankly, might just make it more apparent how bad the story is. I don't know. Maybe that could backfire.
Hey.
Oh, hey, Matthew Tusseroni of Heroes 3. What's up? Got those hybrid poppers / MDMA I asked for?
I think our cast crates got swapped. Is this Mars Volta album yours?
Oh, I think that's Lucro Sucio Los Ojos de Vacio. Wait, this is the first pressing. Did you actually play this? Jesus Christ, Matthew. Anyway, yeah, I was wondering why we were saying things like sweep the leg so much.
Oh, I really wanted to say, remember your training.
Well, whatever. We can just swap back now. We'll just use whatever you've done, and you can have our recordings for your feed.
Okay, but I know we don't have an account with them. Do you?
Now that you mention it, we don't. But why would someone know this much about us and also want to mix us up?
Damn it, I was so close.